Hello there. Welcome to Just the Discs. My name's Brian. We talk about Blu-rays here. And today we are talking about some recent releases. These are all horror or horror-adjacent releases from the good folks at Synapse Films. And I've tried to champion Synapse Films on this channel since it began, and that is because they do very high-quality work. They take a decent amount of time to put things out, and it's always worthwhile. Like, I've never encountered a Synapse release where I wasn't happy with the result. You know, they take this effort to make the transfers good and the restorations good, and they put together nice features. And so I'm a big fan of Synapse, and so it's going to be fun to talk about these three titles. I'm going to start with Creatures from Black Lake. And this is the slipcover of this one. This film is from 1976. So this one, a really solid Bigfoot movie. One of my favorites, I think. And it's one of those things where it's I think it's a tough thing to make a good Bigfoot movie. They tend to be in an area of quality that is questionable. But this one, to me, sort of stands out as one of the best. You know, it's one of those movies that, you know, they take the time to introduce the Bigfoot character. We have a whole opening prologue sequence where you have Jack Elam. One of the things I love about this movie is the cast. Jack Elam plays this, I guess, sort of backwoods fisherman, and he's out in the swamps with his buddy. I think they've actually like poached some animals, and they've tied off some animals in certain spots. And each time they come to a new spot where they had tied one off, they find that the animal's been half eaten or mostly eaten, and so it becomes clear that there's something out there, and then, of course, we find out it is a Bigfoot creature in the swamps of Louisiana. And so he becomes the only person to have witnessed the Bigfoot and lived to tell about it. And so Jack Elam becomes sort of a pivotal point in the movie, and I actually love that the movie gives him such a big role. I mean, he's not the star or anything like that, but he's relatively prominent, and he's one of my favorite character actors. And so I just love a movie that starts with Jack Elam's face, which is one of the great faces in cinema as far as I'm concerned. And so then this small town gets sort of a reputation, I guess, or basically there's a couple folks from a university played by Dennis Fimple and John David Carson. And John David Carson I always remember from Pretty Maids All in a Row. But he's been in some other films for sure. But so these two from the university come out to the small town to investigate, and there's a lot of standoffishness. There's a sheriff who's telling them to not stir anything up or they're going to be in trouble. And then there's one guy that will volunteer some information. And so they talk to him, and it kind of goes from there. And it's just really well paced, I think, for a movie like this. I mean, it does have a few slow spots, but like once we start to see the Bigfoot creature appear, we get it periodically throughout. And then the last segment of the movie is really great in terms of the Bigfoot attack. It's really intense, and yeah, it's just fun. Supporting cast includes Dub Taylor from tons of westerns, and I always remember him from the Hubba Bubba bubblegum commercials. Bill Thurman is the sheriff. Jack Elam I mentioned. I feel like there's a couple other folks you'd recognize in this. But anyway, a very well-made movie shot by the great Dean Cundey, who, of course, would go on to... This is about his like 8th feature, and he follows it with The Human Tornado, the sequel to Dolomite, and then Satan's Cheerleaders. But then a few years later, he makes Rock and Roll High School, and then he makes The Fog, and, of course, Halloween. he gets in with Carpenter and starts making movies with Carpenter, and he does The Thing, and he does Halloween 2, Romancing the Stone, Back to the Future, Big Trouble in Little China, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Back to the Future 2 and 3, Jurassic Park, Apollo 13. He becomes, one of the most, known quantities in cinematography in the 1980s, and he's great, and the movie looks great, and so does this restoration, which is a 4K restoration from the original 35 camera negative. I've seen this movie in cheaper versions, like, I don't know if they've been public domain versions, but they're often not the greatest quality, and this is obviously the best I've ever seen this movie look. So really, really nice addition from them, and includes audio commentary with the filmmakers, author-filmmaker Michael Gingold and film historian Chris Pajali. Very nice track from them. And Swamp Story is an all-new featurette with director of photography Dean Cundy, and newly translated English subtitles. And as I said, this is a great-looking movie, all region. So definitely one I'm glad I picked up. Been working on a Bigfoot project, so I wanted to check out some more Bigfoot movies, and I hadn't seen it. I had started it a few times, but I'd never fully watched it. So anyway, more from Severin. We have next Satan's Little Helper from 2004. This film directed by Jeff Lieberman, and Jeff Lieberman is a filmmaker who has made some films I really like, including Just Before Dawn, which is one of my favorite slasher films, Blue Sunshine, which is a crazy people go nuts on acid movie. Then he did Squirm, the Killer Worms movie. He did Remote Control with Kevin Dillon, where it's sort of an invasion of the body snatchers with VHS tapes kind of thing. And he did this in 2004. And this is one that I had not seen, but had wanted to see. And it's shot on video, it looks like. I'm just trying to think of it. Yeah, it doesn't say anything about the transfer, because yeah, it does look like digital video, but it looks good on this disc. And the story is basically about this little kid. He lives on this island. Does it say what island? It's on the East Coast somewhere. I'm forgetting which island, if it tells. But anyway, so his sister's coming over on the ferry with her new boyfriend, and his mother, played by Amanda Plummer, is going to take him to pick her up so she can take him trick-or-treating. It's Halloween Eve. It's Halloween, the day they'll go out trick-or-treating. And he is initially really put off that his sister has brought her boyfriend along, and he's also really obsessed with this game called, I think the game is actually called Satan's Little Helper. It's this weird video game where you're killing people and getting points, and you're helping Satan. And so the kid runs away because he doesn't want to be around his sister and her boyfriend, and he ends up seeing this weird-looking dude, that's this guy in the mask here. I mean, we see what he's doing. He's effectively murdering people and putting them into, little displays that look like those Halloween displays you have in your yard. So he's trying to disguise the murders, but the little kid weirdly thinks he's Satan, and that he's sort of like gonna be his helper, literally the title of the film. And the killer guy takes a shine to him, and he doesn't speak, so he only answers in nods and shaking his head, and he just starts following him around for a minute, and then he's like, hey, will you kill my sister's boyfriend? And they set up this plan to do that, and it kind of doesn't work out. But there's a great hook in the film, I think, wherein one character is mistaken for another character for a long period of time, and there's a great tension about that. And I think I also really like that the movie doesn't explain or over-explain. They give some indications as to what's going on with this character, but you don't really know what his deal is. And spoiler alert, he never speaks, so you never get to hear his voice or get his explanation of anything. But yeah, the movie starts off a little bit cheesy with that getting on the ferry stuff, but once we get into the kids seeing the Satan character, it really hooked me, And yeah, it just kind of escalates and escalates once this guy gets involved in their lives. Bad stuff is happening, and it has a really enjoyable ending too, which, you know, you can kind of see it coming, but ultimately it's one where I really dug it. And it doesn't totally lay out what happened, what's going to happen. It just sets this thing up in this really cool way. Again, I think Lieberman is really good at this kind of genre filmmaking because he has an awareness of what we've come to expect with films like these, and he's able to zig when we expect a zag and really do stuff that ends up being memorable. So I hadn't seen this. This is a discovery for me this year, and I'm very happy to have discovered it on this Severin Blu-ray. This has an audio commentary with Jeff Lieberman, which I always dig his audio commentaries. It has a vintage behind-the-scenes featurette, about 5 minutes long, and then it has The Devil in the Details, the making of Satan's Little Helper. It's about 33.5 minutes, goes into detail on the production and, you know, talks to a lot of the principals and, you know, very enjoyable stuff. And then Mr. Satan's Neighborhood, a tour of filming the locations with Jeff Lieberman and friend. I'm going to leave that to be seen. 22.5 minutes of touring the locations of the film. Also very cool. So another really nice release from Severin in Satan's Little Helper, directed by Jeff Lieberman. Definitely recommended. And then lastly, we've got a Blu-ray reissue, well, not reissue, a sort of a non-steelbook edition of The Kindred from 1987, which Severin has put out previously on a steelbook version, which I acquired when it came out, and I love it. And this is a movie that was long MIA on DVD, let alone Blu-ray. It went from VHS to nothing for a long, long time. And it was talked about for years by Severin that they were working on this restoration, and we all waited, and it really paid off when they finally got it to us. The idea of the film is that we have a character played by Kim Hunter, who, of course, from the Planet of the Apes movies and others, has a deathbed request for her son, and that is for her son to destroy all her lab notes from her last experiment. And there's some other stuff that comes out in the deathbed confession, but basically she's worried about this experiment and she wants him to basically shut it down completely. So he goes back to his childhood house to investigate, and with some friends and stuff. And there's also another scientist played by Rod Steiger, who definitely does not want this shut down. He's very much the mad scientist of the movie, and boy, oh boy, is he great in this movie. Way over the top, very big in his performance, but very memorable. Some of the other principals in the film, Amanda Pays, Talia Balsam, Timothy Gibbs, David Allen Brooks. And so anyway, it's one of the great creature features of the 1980s. The discoveries these kids make in the basement of this house are quite alarming, and there's some crazy, goopy creatures involved. There is one of my favorite creature attack scenes ever that I've ever seen, and it's practical. It's all practical stuff, which is another thing that's great about it. It's in a car, and it's gnarly. It's just, I'm not going to say anything else about it. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. But boy, it really sticks with you after you check it out. But yeah, it's just a unnerving film, you know, a movie that truly disturbs as well as entertains, and just really well made. Effects are great. This is directed by Stephen Carpenter and Jeffrey Obrow, and these guys had previously made the slasher film The Dorm That Dripped Blood in 1982, and then they made a movie called The Power in 1984. Dorm That Dripped Blood, I'm trying to think who put that Blu-ray out. It may have been Synapse, actually. I'm not remembering exactly. The Power, I think, is a Code Red Blu-ray. I really enjoy both of those films, especially The Power, I think, is really intriguing. Sort of about an ancient idol that has an evil spirit that possesses people and makes them pretty crazy. Really good movie. I dig that a lot. The Kindred is certainly their masterpiece, and it is, like I said, truly one of the great creature features of this period. And it's just really something special. So, it has some nice features. Obviously, you have an all new 4K high definition remaster of the unrated version of the film, which looks great. And you have a new 5.1 mix, original 2.0. Audio commentary with directors Jeffrey Obrow and Stephen Carpenter, moderated by horror journalist Steve Barton. Really good commentary, and a couple things that come up in the commentary. One of the things I always remember is that, and I want to say there's the making of documentary also has some mentions by either Carpenter or Obrow. I can't remember who was directing, but there were some scenes where when you're dealing with Kim Hunter and Rod Steiger, these are method actors. And so there's some moments where they're asking questions about their characters, and when they weren't satisfied with the answers, especially Rod Steiger basically like demanded that the scene be shut down, and then went off and basically told the director, like, this is what I mean. This is what I need when I'm asking you about a scene. This is what I'm talking about. And so a little bit demoralizing, but also a great learning experience in terms of dealing with actors. Anyway, that comes up in the commentary and the making of. The making of is 52 minutes, really great stuff, talking to the principals and cast and stuff like that. A special compilation of creature effects artists, Michael McCracken Jr.'s never before seen on-set footage, 18 minutes of that. And then still gallery, original storyboards, etc. So this one, really highly, highly recommended. If you're into horror, you're into 80s horror, you're into practical effects, it is one of the best of that period, and still pretty underseen, I think. It's definitely picked up a little steam because of this Blu-ray and the Steelbook previous, but I still feel like a lot of people haven't seen it. And if you do and you're into that stuff, it's going to blow your mind. It's great stuff. So anyway, some really nice horror titles from Severin this month. If you're into Bigfoot, if you're into psycho killers dressed in Halloween costumes, and if you're into crazy monsters, they've got you covered. So anyway, that is all I've got for today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you very soon.